The Permian is a division in time consisting of 50 million years and was ruled by some interesting creatures. Research on fossils like the ones that were used to reconstruct this exhibit is important to the understanding of the evolutionary history of our planet. The Permian period occurred between 299 million years ago and 251 million years ago and was ended by the biggest mass extinction of all time, even bigger than the meteor impact that killed off the dinosaurs. During this time period, much of the Earth was cold and dry. The explosion of life that was present resulted from the ending of a great ice age. All of the continents that we see today were smashed together and formed a gigantic landmass that we call Pangaea. The Permian was a time of both small and large animals. Fossils are found in a large range throughout the world, including places like Texas, partly because the continents were all joined at this time into the massive supercontinent Pangaea. In the Permian, there were not yet any mammals, only mammal-like reptiles that somewhat resembled large lizard dogs. These creatures would eventually give rise to the resilient race of mammals. Aside from these pre-mammalian reptiles, other fascinating and wonderful organisms flourished. It was around this time that amphibians began to take hold and began to colonize the land rather than water. It was for this reason that marsh-like environments were favored, like the one that you see here at the Museum of Natural History. The landscape of the Permian was an ancient playground for the reptiles that dominated it. It was widely flat, very swampy, and hosted some very interesting plants. Tall tree-like ferns and horsetails dominated the marshes and fed herbivorous organisms. There were also a variety of reptiles, McHahon being the best known. If you have ever seen a dinosaur-looking animal with a tall sail on its back in a museum, you have seen a Dimetrodon. In reality, these creatures were not dinosaurs, rather Permian reptiles. This animal is believed to have given rise to the modern-day mammals. It was a predatory animal, and its name means two shapes of tooth. A full-grown Dimetrodon would have been around 3 to 4 feet tall and weighed a hefty 250 pounds. As for the sail on its back, it is unsure what it was for. Perhaps it was to attract a mate, or to help regulate the cold-blooded animal's body temperature. The Dimetrodon was a top predator of its time, and would have evoked much fear in the rest of the animals of the Permian. But we can tell because of the fossils found around Russia, Oklahoma, and Texas that it was probably a pretty slow animal because of the sideways orientation of its legs. In the ancient swamps, riverbeds, and marshlands that characterize the Permian period lurked some strange creatures indeed. Take the Diplocasparis, for example. It looked like a salamander and was about 3 feet long. The standout characteristic of this animal is that its boomerang-shaped skull. The reason for its skull is unknown, but it is speculated that it could have been a defense from predators or a way of attracting mates. In the water we see Europs, a swamp-dwelling fish-like amphibian that was about 5 feet long and had evolved from the lobe-finned fish. Its name means drawn-out head because of its disproportionately large head in comparison to its body. Europs ate small fish, reptiles, and amphibians, along with numerous invertebrates like insects. This animal probably hunted stealthily and behaved somewhat like an alligator. It wouldn't have been able to do anything else because its anatomy would have made it somewhat slow. This creature made the best of its ancient world, exploiting both terrestrial and aquatic niches. This was a very important thing because as the glaciers from the previous Carboniferous period melted and the climate dried, movements from the fast diminishing swamps to land was inevitable. There was bountiful plant life in the ancient Permian as well. Some of the most commonly found fossilized ones are the calamites and the ancient fern-like Sphenophyllum. These were survivors of the earlier Carboniferous period. The calamites often referred to as horse-tailed trees because of their sectioned appearance. The trees grew to be pretty large, about 18 meters tall. The joints of the segmented stems are referred to as nodes. The stems of the tree-like plants were made of woody xylem and were kind of like reinforced tubes. The design was very effective because it allowed the plants to grow rapidly with a minimal use of material. Perhaps the fitness of the plant explains why variations of it are still around today. These trees had needle-like leaves and sparse branches. It reproduced via spore sacs organized into cones. The calamites are thought to have grown near water and on the edge of clearings. A fern-like plant called Sphenophyllum dominated the undergrowth of the Permian marshes. The Sphenophyllum had a circular anatomy and looked much like the ferns of today. These plants were also survivors of the Carboniferous period. They preferred to grow along riverbanks and on the edges of swamps. This window into the past via fossils from across the world is a magnificent way to gain perspective on the origins of life and evolutionary processes. The Permian period is of interest because it saw the first mammal-like traits exhibited by reptilian creatures. The process of evolution of mammals, the most successful group of creatures, started in the Permian and continues today. Ancient creatures like Europs, who looked and acted like an alligator, and the odd-looking, sail-bearing Dimetrodon, who would eventually give rise to the race of mammals, flourished in this landscape that was much different, yet much the same as the one we know today.